For our notice of non-discrimination, we would like to invite all to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of their race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.bostonmpo.org/MPO_non_discrimination. We can go on to the next slide. We also have our accessibility statement. This meeting is being recorded and is accessible to those with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level A standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Logan Casey, MPO staff at lcasey@ctps.org or 857-702-3706. And if we can go on to the next slide, please, I'd like to provide an overview of today's session. So we're going to start off kind of with, given that this is a tip how-to, some basics as to what the Boston Region MPO is and what the purpose of the tip is within the MPO's goals and objectives. I'll also provide a brief summary on the eligible types of projects that may be funded through the 5-year plan and the project life cycle, or naturally, what a project as it is developed may witness throughout the many years that it will be kind of constructed, designed, envisioned, etc. We'll also cover application requirements, and I'll also have a demo to demonstrate exactly how potential applicants should navigate the TIP development website to access the various application portals. I'll also provide an overview of what you can expect after a municipality or other partner has applied for a TIP project, with some near-term dates, including deadlines coming up before the calendar year concludes, and long-term dates, namely referring to when can you expect to hear more about when your project has been funded, when will the TIP be finalized, when are contracts available, etc. And of course, the most important part is we will conclude with a question and answer session where we will be more than happy to address any questions or concerns you may have on applying for TIP funding. So with that, we can move on to the next slide. I've been referring to the TIP throughout this presentation, but what is the TIP? It refers to the Transportation Improvement Program for the Boston Region MPO. Each regional planning authority and metropolitan planning organization in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and nationally generally has one. It is a 5-year capital plan for transportation projects that, at least in Massachusetts, each MPO updates annually, and with these updates, solicits new projects for funding. This is the near-term realization of the goals that are defined in the MPO's long-range plan, the LRTP, or Long-Range Transportation Plan. The LRTP not only defines the goal areas, but also, by extension, some of the evaluation criteria that a project is held against. You can see on the graphic on screen here the sort of cycle that a project or that a vision may go through, or I should rather say each of the 3 certification documents that an MPO has and how they relate to one another. Specifically, how the long-range plan helps to inform the Universal Planning and Work Program, or UPWP, which helps to study and analyze issues or projects that may eventually be invested into the TIP. The LRTP really establishes the framework that the TIP tends to try to fulfill. When an MPO creates its near-term regional 5-year plan, MassDOT, as sort of the overseers of the statewide transportation improvement program, bring all of the different regional TIPs together, incorporate their own statewide priority investments, including investments in the interstate system, and also bring in other investments from regional transit authorities or larger entities like the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority into the full capital plan. There is also a capital investment plan, which is above the STIP, which includes state-funded investments, as well as the federally funded investments that you would see here. We can move on to the next slide. I'd like to kind of cover what the long-range transportation plan helps to inform in terms of the TIP development process. I mentioned that it sets sort of the vision and criteria areas, and based on the MPO's most recent long-range transportation plan, Destination 2050, these 6 goal areas are enabling transportation equity to ensure an equitable distribution of benefits and that no party bears any disproportionate burden from transportation investments. An emphasis on improving safety for all the users of any transportation facility, Improved mobility and reliability for projects. This referring to something like, for example, travel time reliability, ensuring that if you are navigating on a roadway and you expect that your commute takes 30 minutes, that it does in fact take 30 minutes. Access and connectivity, referring to how the transportation system brings people and goods to where they need to go or want to go. And resilience and clean air and healthy communities being two related areas of emphasis, focusing on how well the transportation system is not only equipped to address present climate needs, but also emerging needs in communities such as cleaner air, greenhouse gas reduction, etc. In correspondence with these evaluation categories, the TIP also has 6 discrete investment programs that fund a variety of project types. These include our Complete Streets program, the Intersection Improvements program, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Networks, or I should say, Bicycle Networks and Pedestrian Connections program, the Transit Transformation program, and the Major Infrastructure program. These 5 make up what we call the core investment programs, and then the 6th program, Community Connections, contains multiple different kinds of investment types within it, like sort of sub-programs in that way. We can go on to the next slide. And the next one after that, please. I'll put some more detail in here on what each of these core programs are. So for example, I have several images on screen here that illustrate different types of projects that the MPO may look to fund. For the Bicycle Network and Pedestrian Connections program, for example, a municipality may want to invest in construction of an extension of one of their rail trails. I believe this image here shows components of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail in Concord, but it also improves things like shared use paths on urban roadways, sidewalk extensions, or pedestrian-oriented traffic safety improvements. Complete Streets is our broadest and sort of catch-all program. Complete Streets can not only refer to kind of what the name implies, where it is a larger form of comprehensive transportation investment that incorporates improvements to safety for all users, state of good repair for assets, and just trying to make our roadways be more accessible to all potential users. But also it can include smaller level things like culvert and bridge replacements, for example, or perhaps roadway rising in order to address things like elevated sea levels. Further, we also have our Intersection Improvements program. This not only refers to items that may be installing a new signal at an intersection, all the way up to a comprehensive statewide priority corridor upgrade to improve traffic safety. And again, that can also be multimodal safety. Our Major Infrastructure program is unique in that the Major Infrastructure program is the focus of the long-range plan, primarily. And basically what the Major Infrastructure program is it is a sort of combination of all of the other investment programs looking for projects that have a regionally significant component. For example, the MPO has projects like the Rutherford Avenue project in Charlestown, which is fundamentally a complete streets project, but has such a significant scale to it that it is defined as major infrastructure. This can also include transit projects that sort of ascend to this level of investment. Within each of the above, save for major infrastructure, is also the MPO's project design pilot, which we will talk about later today, which is launching with this year as kind of the first foray of the Boston region into utilizing federal transportation dollars to support the municipal design of projects that will eventually be funded for construction in the TIP, should they apply for that funding. We can go on to the next slide. We have our sort of near-term projects. What do I mean by long-term and near-term projects based on what is on screen here? Many of the other investment programs that I just listed, when they seek TIP funding, due to the timelines that it takes to construct, usually get constructed in the 5th year of the TIP. In this case, we're discussing the development of the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 TIP, so the most funding will likely be available in federal fiscal year 2029 to fund projects. However, through the MPO's Community Connections programs and the Transit Transformation programs, there are opportunities for nearer-term investments in federal fiscal year 25. This includes what we refer to as our quick builds through Community Connections, the Community Connections program being the first and last mile transportation solutions program. This includes bicycle lane painting, bicycle rack procurement, bike share, which can include not only the expansion of the bike share system, but also now replacement of existing bike share facilities, thanks to modifications made to the bike share program in the 24-28 TIP, microtransit pilots for temporary 3-year microtransit services, including demand response, fixed route, or flex service, and also wayfinding signage investments. And this wayfinding signage can also not only be transit supportive, but also for pedestrians, bicyclists, etc. I have on screen here, for example, while the MPO has not funded a wayfinding signage project in recent years, a recent shared streets and spaces grant that was implemented through MassDOT funding by the city of Medford. In addition, under the Transit Transformation Program, this program is a combination of different project types, not only for larger scale transit projects like those that may be seen from the MBTA and regional transit authorities, but also there are some municipal options here that were previously included under community connections. This includes projects like transit signal priority corridors for municipalities that may be in the MBTA service area or maybe trying to improve more suburban transit mobility. If we can move on to the next slide, I'd like to kind of discuss the project lifecycle, and I apologize because the bottom item may have been cut off a little bit by this. But what this graphic on screen illustrates here is the process through which a project may move through its life if it is a highway project. Really, the MPO's TIP development is a parallel process with how MassDOT devises a project, because the Boston Region MPO is not an implementing agency and instead works as a partner with those who do implement. In this case, a project's life can really start in one of two places that are related to one another. Either a municipality can have a conversation with their MassDOT Highway Division district or a conversation with MPO staff. From this point, all municipalities would be required to initiate their project through the Massachusetts Project Intake Tool, which includes a project need form and project initiation form. While the municipality is doing this, MPO staff will incorporate the project into what you would see on the right side of the screen there as the next step, the TIP universe of projects. What this item refers to really is a spreadsheet that captures all of the different local transportation priority projects that may eventually seek funding through the TIP in a future cycle, or even the current cycle. The universe of projects also includes those that may have been recently funded as well. Once a project has obtained its initiation form and is in the TIP universe of projects, the next step is really one of the most difficult ones. And this is starting design. On the left side of the screen, in the bottom left, you can see that there's a red box around two other steps here: project review committee approval and the environmental continuation of design and right-of-way processes. This box refers to really the time at which a project may become eligible to apply for construction funding with the Boston Region MPO. The project review committee in this case refers to a body at MassDOT, usually in coordination with their highway districts, that will evaluate a project, assign it their score, and effectively say that it is suitable to move forward and utilize federal funding. At that stage, there's an arrow that moves towards the evaluation with TIP criteria. When a municipality has reached that stage and has applied for funding through the TIP for their project, MPO staff will begin, generally next spring, evaluating these projects so that we may then make a programming recommendation to the MPO, effectively saying, we believe or do not believe that a given project is equipped to be funded. And then it will be programmed in the TIP if that assertion is a yes. Once a project is programmed in the TIP and as it approaches the year in which it was programmed, let's say federal fiscal year 2026, on October 1st, 2025, it may be eligible to go up for construction if that is the date of advertisement. So if we move on to the next slide, we'd actually like to kind of do a demo here because we have a new system of running through how to apply for TIP funding. So we'll go to the application requirements first. So I did just mention the 25% design requirement, but there are some exceptions to that. For one, within the MPO's Transit Transformation and Community Connections programs, because these are quick builds and are generally smaller scale on the municipal side, there are no written prerequisites. If you are procuring bike racks, you do not need to initiate the project with MassDOT. Instead, we would just ask that you confer with stakeholders in advance. So for example, if you are looking to install bike share systems or bike racks at MBTA stations, or if you are looking to do a transit signal priority project, that you just have a letter of support from any of the other agencies or stakeholders who may be involved in administering the service or who may have the right of way. With the project design pilot, which is contained within all of the other investment programs like Complete Streets, we require that project initiation be conducted with written acknowledgement from districts also being a potential substitute. The reason being is that for the MPO's project design pilot, it is for new project designs only. This is because the MPO uses federal funding, which has different requirements for permitting than a locally funded or state-funded design may otherwise require. If you have already begun designing a project in-house and has reached a point necessary for, let's say, internally 25% design, the MPO cannot support that last 75% without requiring a total reprocurement of a consultant and effectively starting over there. In addition, as I mentioned previously, we then have our core programs under construction. These strongly prioritize projects that are at a 25% design submission submitted to MassDOT. There are very limited exceptions here. So for example, one exception may be if the municipality has a project that is at 100% design and they have submitted it to MassDOT, MassDOT just hasn't reviewed the designs yet, that may be an option, as has historically happened, but is not necessarily one of the ones that may be prioritized in the scoring process. If we move on to the next slide, we can then kind of go over with the application process. So I will be doing a demo of this shortly, but in writing, this application process is an online survey portal through the survey tool known as Qualtrics. There are two different applications. The first is the Unified Core Programs form for both construction and design. And there's a separate portal for community connections projects, Scorecards and links for each of these investment programs are available on the TIP development website, which you can find at www.ctps.org/tip-dev. I will actually drop that in the chat right now. But if we move on to the next slide, I will show you what the TIP development website looks like. So let me share my screen. Logan, I may need you to cede control to me. Thank you. One moment here. All right. So this is the TIP development website. This is what you would generally see when you move to apply for TIP funding. On the right side of the screen here, you can see that there's a banner indicating key dates in the TIP development process, along with some text on the left side that generally summarizes it. We are in the period right now of October to December, roughly, where much of the activity being undertaken by MPO staff is soliciting new project ideas, and of course, as of yesterday, November 1st, applications being open at this time. We also have some quick guides up top on how a project should be initiated with MassDOT. And if I skip to the very bottom, right between the meat of this presentation, we also have some resources here on the website, including the TIP database, MassDOT's project viewer tool, which maps out all the different locations of highway projects around the state, last year's TIP how-to presentation, which will be updated with this year's presentation recording when complete, last year's TIP development page, and also some MassDOT project references that you may find useful, and some federal guidance. But if we move back to the middle of the screen here, you can see under the Core Investment Programs heading, and also the Community Connections Program headings, various links. The first of these links is the Core Investment Program application portal, which I'll click on shortly, but we have scorecards for each of the investment programs here. These scorecards tell you what criteria your project will be evaluated against, and this criteria generally correlates with the questions that you will find when you move to apply for the project. As you can see, if you are on the website right now, not all of these scorecards have yet been posted, as we're still trying to get them formatted just right before we present them publicly. But if I can switch over to this screen. Logan, did it swap over to the Qualtrics form? I can't actually.
You're on the Qualtrics form now.
Excellent. So if I was to click on the core applications button on the previous screen, this is the screen that it would take you to for what we would refer to as the core applications button. So let's say that hypothetically, I am looking to do a complete streets project. I'm looking to resurface the roadway, add in a shared use path, do sidewalk repairs, and let's say it's a state numbered route, for point of argument, Route 20. I would first be greeted on this main page here, would press the arrow to continue, and I would list through both my contact name, the municipality that I'm affiliated with, or other agency. If you are, for example, a consultant working for a municipality, please list the municipality that you are working on the behalf of, and also your position in there, your phone number, email address, and other information here. I should mention right now that, as you're about to see, there is no need to fill out every field. You can actually move back and forth between the survey as you go and leave and come back at any time. If you do have any issues, or if you don't know where to find certain information, you can always reach out to MPO staff to try to figure out what the best way to track down that information is, or any substitutes there. On the next slide, because we're in the core investment programs category, there's a couple key areas that we'll want to keep in mind here. First is the name of the project. This is generally something that you can use whatever name you have internally for it, but we do prefer the name that is assigned on, say, the project initiation form that MassDOT has, just for consistency. What is very important is if you have the project number. For example, this usually starts with the number 6. It would be 6 digits. Let's say 609158 or something of that sort here, which I'll just drop in right there. The current project design status, which is whatever the municipality says it is. The current project cost estimate, which refers to the total federal participating cost. What this basically means is, what is the maximum amount that you think this project will cost to conduct? And the funding amount requested from the Boston Region MPO. This can be the same as the total federal participating cost, or if you have something like, let's say, a federal discretionary grant, a congressional earmark, something different in that form. Next, again, to the important areas, we then have a drop-down function here. With this drop-down, as you can kind of see here, there are 4 different options. If you pick complete streets, you're then prompted with the second question here. Are you applying for the fiscal year 25 design pilot? Let's say, hypothetically, I'm saying yes here. I then fill out my scope, my goals. I can upload files here, such as an ArcGIS shapefile to show a project area, or other things like letters of support and the like. If I go to the next question, you will then be prompted with a set of questions that are generally unique to the investment program you specified. If I go back, so you can see here that we have existing conditions for people bicycling, proposed improvements for people bicycling. I'm sorry. So had I picked a different investment program, for example, like let's say intersection improvements, these questions may be different. If, for example, I wanted to apply for a transit signal priority project, which I will go back and do right now. Oh, it's because I'm logged in on that. Okay. We learn these things as we test them. So if I wanted to do a transit signal priority project, for example, I would go through this same process. I would select the transit transformation investment type option. And then the next question that it would be asked is, would you like to apply for a municipal transit signal priority project, a municipal bus lane project, or if you're one of our RTA or MBTA partners joining us today, a MBTA/RTA capital project? You would select that, and then you would move through the process there. To reiterate, MPO staff are happy to help you through this process if you have any questions. If it would also help, you are able to just skip through all of these questions and read them in advance to get an idea of how you would want to compile it. You can copy and paste information into these fields from a Word doc if that is your best approach to conducting this. And at the very end, there will be a confirmation button if you have selected the project design pilot. To toggle that, indicate that you are looking for design funding only, not construction funding, and then you'll move into some other category areas for scoring there. These are generally consistent across each of the project areas, including our categories for resilience. And if your project has some kind of complete streets element, you may be asked questions about statewide greenhouse gas reporting requirements for what is called CMAQ eligibility. This is congestion mitigation and air quality funding. As part of this tranche of federal funding, the MPO is required to report exactly the extent to which a project may be expected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. As you can see on the screen here, there are many different fields that may be relevant to the type of project that you are conducting. As previously mentioned, if you do not know how to answer one of these fields, or if you are having any difficulty calculating these figures, please reach out to MPO staff and we'll be more than happy to try to help you there. And then when you're done, you would conclude the application, would receive a contact message, and then you will be sent an email, I believe, to your account confirming that you have submitted your application. Also, feel free just to notify MPO staff if you would like, just to confirm that the application was received. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Logan, and if there's any questions on this part of the presentation, I'll happily cover them at the end. So, As I just mentioned, you should receive a confirmation email after submitting your project, but if you do not, or if you just want to be safe, please email MPO staff if you do have any questions, want to confirm your submission, or, and this happens quite a bit, want to attach more files. If you apply for your project, let's say December 7th, and you realize that you had letters of support you obtained in December, or maybe we're even in February and we're scoring the projects and you received more letters of support or updated design plans, there's nothing wrong with emailing MPO staff with a zip file, for example, just attaching those resources. We may also reach out to you afterwards and say, hey, we'd like a little bit more information here. Could you please provide this? If you add that additional information is necessary, you can also, just to make sure, to please refer to the project number and any correspondence that you may have with MPO staff, just for that kind of consistency. We will also be notifying all MassDOT staff with a list of any projects received for consideration for MPO funding, as again, Boston Region MPO is not an implementing agency. So generally speaking, you will be primarily working with folks at MassDOT, even if you are selected with for TIP funding here. We are more than happy to help walk you through the process, though, or facilitate certain discussions you may have there. We can move on to the next slide. I'd like to again reiterate some prerequisites here. I know I had mentioned these earlier in the application requirements. So for one, if you are looking for any project that is not Community Connections or within the Transit Transformation Program, the project should be listed in the Massachusetts Project Intake Tool, or MAPIT. If you are looking for one of the core investment program types to apply for here, one of the bicycle and pedestrian ones, complete streets, intersection improvements, the project should be at least 25% design, whereas the design pilot only requires that MAPIT initiation or written confirmation support from your local MassDOT highway district in lieu of that. If you are unsure of what project type you wish to apply to, please talk to us. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of overlap between each of the investment programs. So if you're wondering whether your project is complete streets, intersection improvements, bike and ped, we can help you to navigate that process, because that distinction can sometimes be a formality. If you also want to reach out for design funding, in addition to doing so through this portal, please reach out to MassDOT as well. Just notify them that you're interested in this. They've been very helpful in trying to make sure that we can initiate more projects so that more projects in the Commonwealth can utilize TIP funding. So if we can go on to the next slide, I have some near-term dates and engagement to keep in mind here. So first off, as of yesterday at noontime, applications for TIP funding launched then at noon. These applications will close December 31st, 2023. Historically, we've given 6 weeks to complete an application. This time we're going for a full 2 months to try to give folks more time. But we will also be trying to make sure that we have interim feedback to applicants around February 2024 or in March there. Project selection, if you do wish to apply, would commence in March and would likely conclude mid-April with the release of the draft TIP. TIPs are generally finalized at the end of May or in very early June, which is when that you would know for certain if your project is funded, but you'll have a pretty good idea of it at the end of late April. You can also contact myself, Ethan Lapointe, or Logan Casey with any questions. My email is elapointe, Lapointe, @ctps.org, and Logan's is lcasey@ctps.org. We can go on to the next slide. We also have a couple. Oh, I thought we had long-term. I guess we did it on one slide. So that brings us to the end of the presentation and our question and answer period. I'd be more than happy if folks want to raise their hands to kind of address what questions or concerns you may have. Yes, Jen.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for the excellent presentation, and I really appreciated the walkthrough of the application. It's good to know that you can advance through it and return to where you were. One question, I was wondering if you could clarify the point you made about if you're interested in design funds also reaching out to MassDOT. Is that like where, if we're thinking about the design pilot, we should also be in close coordination with MassDOT, or is that a separate, not necessarily related to the design pilot?
So yes, it should be both, But for the design pilot in particular, we would ask that you are in close coordination with MassDOT there. This goes back to the MPO not being an implementing agency. You will likely be assigned a MassDOT project manager to work with, and the contract for design services will be held by MassDOT, even though the MPO is providing funding. They will also be providing for reimbursement of the contract there. So if any municipalities on this call are familiar with federal design earmarks they may have received under the bipartisan infrastructure law, this design pilot will, in terms of function, work very similarly to how those earmarks currently function, where a municipality would submit their invoices for their contract and may be expected to be reimbursed within 30 to 60 days of invoice submission. They would be eligible as well for coverage and reimbursement on 80% of project costs. So the MPO will cover up to 80% of design costs, 80% basically take it all the way to final design, and the 20% match will still be required from the municipalities as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, Derek.
Hi, Ethan. I have a question about, I realized this presentation was mainly about highway programming of projects, but if communities are working with anyone identified in your human transit coordinated transportation plan or other stakeholders interested in providing transit service using transit funding or transit grant opportunities from the federal level, is there a special process for communicating that to you and CTPS that they should know about?
We would ask through, I believe there may still be a question in this application that indicates where other funding sources may come from. For example, we've had some municipalities state that they have $1.5 million in a state bond bill, in a federal earmark, that they may have received a CZM community grant, Mass Trails funding. We would just ask that if you do have existing funding sources already committed to the project, that you indicate those. Those commitments will often be to a municipality's benefit if you have more local match to support it, if that helps. Yeah, Jen.
I'll defer to Rachel first.
Okay, Rachel, you can go.
Are you sure, Ethan? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So just in clarifying, to get on the tip, going from the map it phase to get on the tip is 25% design plans, engineered design plans, correct?
Yes, so if you have submitted 25% design plans to MassDOT, we would count that as the necessary step to be eligible for prioritization into the tip for construction funding. I'll also add too that if anybody on this call is interested in the project design pilot, if you are selected for the project design pilot, you could concurrently, once you hit 25% design through that program, apply separately for construction funding as well. So you could pursue both initiatives kind of in parallel when ready.
And I had one more question. Sorry, Jen. For the design pilot, what's the money that's available for this, and how many projects are you thinking are going to be applying, or you would fund? Again, I know it's kind of on the hush hush. I don't think a lot of people know about it, but you'll see a lot of municipalities apply once they find out. So that can rack up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm expecting that. So we have set aside a total of $4 million for this program. I should specify though that $4 million is match inclusive. So functionally, the MPO will cover $3.2 million, and the other $800,000 would come from local matching sources as well. So in this case, we are expecting with that $3.2 million of federal funding, We're hoping to cover 4 design contracts ideally. With that said, we do have some key considerations. For one, if a project is smaller, let's say you're doing a culvert and you're looking for $150,000 worth of design, that may, if we have many of those, we may have more design contracts that we administer. In addition to that as well, though, if there are communities that, let's say, for example, have had CTPS, the Boston Region MPO, or MassDOT do something like a road safety audit, and you are looking to initiate or advance a project based on the findings of that study or audit, those municipalities may have an advantage there because they're taking what has been studied and trying to move forward and design it to take it to that next step. Also, any municipalities that are working together on a project, let's say doing a complete streets corridor as an example, they may also have preference when it comes to the selection process as well, because bundling design contracts into one means that we can kind of coordinate these a little bit easier. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that in addition to finances being one competing factor, so again, that 3.2 million, deciding who may get selected and the evaluation criteria, we would also advise that any municipality that is looking to apply for the design pilot state in their application the expected time that they anticipate to commit to supporting the design process as it moves ahead, just to indicate that the project design will continue apace if selected for funding, just for municipal capacity to complete the project. Morgan.
Hi, yeah, thanks for the presentation. This is really great information. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the universe of projects. I think you mentioned that like municipalities, if they weren't quite ready for applying for TIP funding, could still potentially be in that universe of projects. And I think there are some in my municipality that might fall into that. So just wondering if you could speak more to that.
Yeah, the universe of projects is it's a living document and it's also an evolving document, I would say, in terms of its role in the MPO, but it is really a running list that we just use to keep track of where municipal priorities are. I believe there's about 120 projects in it right now. It is not, however, the definitive list. Very often the TIP universe of projects is really only there for MPO staff and other stakeholders in the region to get a sense of where priorities are. But to be honest with you, half the time, about half of the applications that the MPO receives in a given year for TIP funding may not have been on the TIP universe of projects. With that said, with the TIP universe this year, the MPO is looking to expand the list of eligible projects on the universe to now include our community connections programs, including our bike share support programs and transit transformation, so we can keep better track on where local initiatives lie. It's also my understanding that the current format of the TIP universe of projects, which is generally a Excel table that is converted to a PDF and presented in November and December to the MPO board, may change in its sort of presentation format going forward. It may be a little bit more interactive, but don't have anything concrete to reveal yet.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Derek.
Thanks, Ethan. If a community went through the process last year of submitting a 25% design project for regional target participation for MPO funding on the 24 to 28 tip, the current tip, do they need to go through this process again for getting funding for their project on the 25 to 29 tip that's being developed, or are they sitting pretty and automatically migrating over?
Very good question. So if you have already been programmed for funding in the TIP and have been selected, you likely do not need to reapply. MPO staff will contact you if you should reapply, which may be triggered under 2 key areas. These are, however, areas that would likely come up in the spring after the application period is closed. The first being a scope change. If you have a project in the TIP, let's say you want to add a bridge to that scope of work, you should mention to the MPO that you intend to reapply for an amended scope of work to adjust the funding there. In addition, if you have a significant cost change that you would like the MPO to accommodate or a delay, we would advise that the municipality work to reapply if deemed necessary. One of the reasons why the 25% design requirement exists was based on the findings of the TIP Ad Hoc Cost Committee, I believe in 2021. And some of the determinants from that committee were that the MPO board for the Boston Region MPO may vote to find that any project that has a significant change in project scope throughout its life, or that sees a significant increase in cost, would need to reapply for funding and to be rescored by MPO staff at the board's discretion.
I have a second part question to that. If a project was at 25% design when it was added to the 24 to 28 program and has seen no design progress, is it likely to stay programmed in the same year for 25 to 29 tip development, or is it at risk of being removed from the program?
Yes, so I feel like that was kind of rhetorical, but there is a decent chance that if the project has not seen any design progress, so let's say that you have a project that is in federal fiscal year 25 and the design has not moved from 25%, there is a very strong chance the project will be delayed. And if there is not a realistic expectation that that design can continue, may be deprogrammed. With that said, MPO staff again work in conjunction with MassDOT on these efforts from the implementation side. And when it comes to kind of different points of contact in the TIP process, MassDOT engineers and project managers make the final recommendations as to what a project's fate should be in terms of whether it is currently programmed in the TIP or looking to be programmed in the TIP. So if you are applying for a new project this year, the MassDOT project managers, right-of-way experts, and environmental permitting experts and other subject matter experts for that matter, will weigh in to identify the ideal year based on MPO funding that a project should be programmed. We try to defer to those who know a little bit more than us when it comes to the actual scopes of work here.
If I may,
Sure.
I just wanted to say for folks on the call, I'm MassDOT STIP coordinator, so I work closely with Ethan and all the other MPO regions on programming highway and transit investments in their respective TIPs. As Ethan had noted with the TIP development timeline, a big milestone that we reach when determining what's possible to TIP program is an event the first week of February called TIP Readiness Days. I want to enlighten municipalities and consultants that are on the call as to what goes into this meeting. It is the opportunity where MassDOT Highway Division, any environmental reviewers in the permitting office, right-of-way, MPO staffs, all of the districts, as well as planning staff from the Office of Transportation Planning at MassDOT, look at the design status of all projects and have everything on the table to determine when the earliest deliverable or ready date is for a project. As we approach that in February, for any projects that I was alluding to that may currently be programmed and be up for review on whether or not we recommend those staying programmed in the same year, the next couple months are a really important time for municipalities and consultants to coordinate and communicate with their respective highway district office on whether or not any progress has been made for a project and whether or not it is on track for its current program year. If there has been no design progress on those projects, it is not in the best interest of any planning organization across the Commonwealth to set aside funding for that project because it's at risk of not being ready to deliver at that time. Similarly, as you consider projects that you want to program for TIP funding from the Boston MPO region, just please be mindful about that expectation that we annually look at the projects programmed in all years of the TIP and whether or not all experts at the table agree about whether or not it's possible and deliverable at the earliest date that it may be programmed. Obviously, other considerations are taken into account for a program year and whether or not it's consistent with MPO priorities, but I just wanted the readiness date and timing and what homework you could do over the next few months to ensure your projects stay on track happens. I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Derek. That's actually valuable insight. As I mentioned, we try to coordinate closely on all of these efforts, which is why if you are doing anything with the MPO, please consider reaching out to MassDOT in tandem so that if you have an issue, we can both work to resolve it on that front. I'll also just take a quick opportunity to mention here before I go over to Andrew that there is a project type that I did not mention, which may not necessarily need to reapply each year, but should be prepared to present its findings and outcomes to the MPO board each year. And this is in our microtransit pilot program. That pilot program is for 3 years of MPO funding if selected. Successful applicants should expect that after 1 year of operation, that they will need to be reapproved for funding as they move into their second and third years, which requires reporting on things like what their actual ridership is relative to what they said they were going to obtain in their application document. But Andrew.
Yes, what are the differences for a multi-community project, say a trail which goes across 3 communities, or a road which does multiple communities in the process?
That's a very good question. So if you have a project that crosses multiple communities, one of the baseline requirements is that all communities are on board with the project. Second, we would advise that the municipalities work out amongst themselves what their expected relative match contributions are going to be. So if you have 3 communities that have, one of them has 50% of the project area, one has 40%, and one has 10%, you would likely expect that their relative contributions of local match to the design pilot are going to be 50, 40, 10. That isn't a requirement, but it's just something to keep in mind there. We would also make sure to mention that all of the municipalities should agree on what the scope of work is and should be willing to identify a point contact as far as communications with the project there. As a result of the design pilot, because we are cognizant that project design is meant to explore different alternatives for a project, because as design progresses, we may find things that require scope adjustments. If there's a change that requires phasing or breaking out based on municipal boundaries due to scheduling or certain permitting issues, those are all things we could accommodate. But we would just ask as a baseline, if your municipality is interested, or municipalities, in applying for this TIP design pilot, just reach out to MPO staff first. If you are a group of municipalities, we are more than happy to help you there. And moreover, we also work closely with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council on these efforts. In the interest of improving regional transportation options, they will also be more than happy to work with your communities to try to devise a transportation solution that works for everybody. Yes, Jen.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question that I know is probably not able to be answered in full, but one of the things when I speak to others in the city about applying for some of these fundings are concerns around the different requirements when advancing a project with MPO funds as opposed to funding it municipally. And so I was curious if you had a kind of summary of which types of projects have which different types of additional requirements associated with them to be moved through these programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ones that are likely to have the least amount of upfront requirements are going to be in the Community Connections program for the MPO. So if you are looking to procure bicycle racks, let's say, for your public school district, with that, we would only require that you have identified locations, hopefully done some public engagement as part of that, but that you just also have an idea on what racks you might want to use, quotes for those racks, and that you can line up the 25%, or I'm sorry, the 20% match when the time comes there. This is generally the same for the bicycle lanes and items like bike share. There's some key qualifications though, depending on the investment type. So bike lanes, for example, let's make sure that the right of way is all in order for that project, if applicable, if we're trying to do something outside of the roadway right of way. Or for bike share, especially with bike share, I would also add, please be sure to also email the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for those projects as well, just because they are another partner in the bike share network. We're more than happy to make that connection in addition. Then we have the microtransit pilot projects. These are the ones where they generally have to have quite a bit of information up front. So while they may be a near-term investment, we would ask that there is a very thorough and robust methodology applied to the calculation of ridership estimates for those projects. As stated previously, we also require that those projects report report quarterly to MassDOT at least on their ridership, and then present to the MPO board to make sure that they are performing well against their expectations, that the board will continue to support them across multiple years. With the project design pilot, which is really the next stage, these are projects that should be initiated with MassDOT. Initiation is something that can happen in the near term, but the funding for this and eventually the realization of a complete design is going to take a few years. Once the project is selected for design and a contract is made, there will then be a request for proposals that will be conducted in partnership with MassDOT once the contract is in place. So it may take a little bit more time there. The most difficult, I would say, process between when you actually realize construction and getting it started today is the core investment program. So if you are trying to start a project today, chances are it will take more than a few years between now and when you actually get shovels in the ground there. So if you want to make a complete streets project in your community and you don't know where to start, reach out to MPO staff. The best time to start was yesterday. Second best time is today on that front. But that also applies, of course, to your intersection improvements programs, bicycle and pedestrian network connections, and transit transformation to some extent. In that case, transit transformation, usually the RTAs and the MBTA already have their own designs. I would also just mention too that the major infrastructure program is one that we know that there is a lot of buzz about in municipalities. These are the big projects that people often think of when think of major investments. With these projects, we generally require that they are in the long-range plan. Up front, that is a plan that is updated every 4 years. The MPO recently adopted its long-range plan, so it may take a little while for a project to be added to that long-range plan. However, the TIP is a living document and the LRTP is a living document. So if you have any questions or if you're not sure, if everything else fails, feel free to reach out to us or come to us first. But
Come to you first and last. Awesome. Thank you, Ethan.
So I know we're kind of reaching the end of our scheduled time here. We have about 4 minutes left. So if anybody else has any questions here before we wrap up, be more than happy to field them. But I will also just leave my contact information in chat real quick for those who may need to log off. Yeah, Rachel.
Sorry, it's Rachel again. So just realizing this morning that you are only a group of, I think, 7 people, and have this, you have a lot, you're first and last. You're going to field a lot of calls on this. Is there anything in the pipeline to, I guess, streamline your processes and making sure that, I'm sure an influx of information will come to you, or questions and answers will come to you. Sure, trying to find help is always, everybody's having that issue. But again, realizing you guys do a lot of work, you have a lot of communities that you oversee, and of different sizes and shapes. So, and hearing just email Ethan or Logan. That's a lot on you guys as well. So
I appreciate the concern. We do try to be as responsive as we possibly can here. I will mention to folks on this call, historically, we have obtained more projects in prior years of tip cycles back in 2021 to 25 in that cycle, for example, than we have seen in recent years after COVID. So while municipalities may think that they are one municipality of the 97 in the Boston region, we are more than happy to work with all of them because we know that every municipality has a transportation need here that can be addressed. And as I will always say, municipalities, and maybe this is my closing argument, if you want tip funding, you have to show up to win, and only the people that apply are likely to get funding through the tip. So don't worry about us, just worry about keeping your projects moving along. We'll figure it out ourselves, but. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. We're at 3:59 on my end, so I think we're going to start wrapping up here. Again, I greatly appreciate your attendance today at this tip how-to session. If you are registered for next Thursday's how-to session, that is going to be a repeat of today's information here. There will be no new information, so feel free to pass if you've already scheduled, but we'll also have another question and answer period there if some other questions or items come up. And again, feel free to reach out to myself, Ethan Lapointe, or my colleague Logan Casey if you have any questions about any of our investment programs. But with that, thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.